It has been over a year again since we've done an update video. It might be a little surprised that WHIMC is still doing videos and updates, and that's because we've been working with Quick Red Fox, which is shorthand for another NSF-funded grant that we've gotten. There's going to be a whole other video on all the different components of QRF and what we mean by that, but I still wanted to do another teacher tutorial on some of the changes that we've made to the curriculum and server, as well as some of the support tools that we try to make available for everybody. We have changed a whole lot of things, but one of the most important and that you would need to address first is that we are now using local-based modifications for clients to enhance the experience even more. For a long time, WHIMC was under the assumption that we had to have kids be able to connect from anywhere with any kind of computer, and we wanted them all to be able to have mini maps and sort of similar looking texture packs and that kind of thing. And we've tried to have that as a standardized fallback, but there's actually a lot of stuff we can add by running local elements using something called multi-MC. Now, this is something we've offered on the website for a long time. So if you go to whimc.org, it will take you to the real URL right here. And we have this section with tools and downloads. And if you go here, we've actually had these up for a long while, but a lot of people weren't using them unless they were using our very specific clients. You can actually go to this WHIMC multi-MC package link down at the bottom. And what's notable about this, you'll get to pick Windows or PC, is that it's just a big download, and we'll walk you through the instructions to install this. So this is what it looks like on my computer. And you can see I have many versions of the game. We have like every iteration of WHIMC that has existed over the years there. And we now have a QRF instance, which has been tailored to support the camps that we've been doing ever since we started the QRF grant. Now you still need Java SDK, preferably version 17 installed to run the current version that's up here. But if we do update that, it will reflect that on the website. Here's a link for downloading multi-MC. There's some information both on Mac and PC on how to permit third-party programs, just in case you do run into that. But the main thing that's notable down here is we have these instances with a bunch of stuff packed into them. Now, there's a lightweight instance. You'll notice these ones that are very small. So what teachers may want to use if they're just trying to get it going on their computer and they're not too concerned about having preloaded worlds, that's right there. But what you can also do is download the bigger instances for participants and so on. And when you add instance up in the upper left corner here on multi-MC, you can import that file. Here, I'll kind of show what that looks like. You would do import from zip that you've already downloaded. You can technically even give it the URL if you want off the website if your internet connection is pretty strong. And what that will do is add a little instance here in the software that you can launch as Minecraft. Now, there are other elements of multi-MC that I'm not going to explain today, like you can add multiple accounts. Like here you can see I can log in as any of our student accounts. It does a bunch of handy stuff that's neat, but notably it will run. We can look at this really quickly. If I go to edit instance here, I can go to loader mods and you can see some of the things that we have added. So for a long time, we had a built-in mini map in the game and it made use of the game's map interface, but it wasn't that great. There were a lot of things that it was wanting for, and particularly we wanted to be able to give students objectives on the map that were a little bit easier to identify. And so we've done that by adding voxel map. We've added the sodium element to make it easier to both run shaders, which look really cool if you want to show off stuff in the planetarium dome, but also that you can adjust the settings down to be a lot lighter weight for worse computers. And then notably this sky boxes, which lets us do custom skies that are really appropriate for astronomy. So that's what is packed into this instance to make it appropriate. And it also, you'll note that it comes with the right version number of Minecraft to match our server, which is cool. But something that's pretty notable and super neat about our downloadable instances is they come with stuff with them. There was a giant difference in sizes. You might have noticed some more gigabytes versus the little one for instructors that was just a few hundred. If you actually go look at this instance, we should be able to see view worlds, and you can see all of the celestial bodies worlds that are available on the server are available locally as single player worlds. And we use those oftentimes when like kids finish survey early, or if they get there early and they're impatient and we don't really want to let them go running around killing zombies because that'll kind of take them too far in the direction of getting off track. We'll say that they can go play around the single player worlds. One of the big benefits of the single player worlds is that if they're running them on the local client, which has sodium adjusted to, it's basically graphic settings that can be scaled up and down. One, they can see them with shaders on if you want to allow that. But two, there's stuff like if we load the supercluster, they'll be able to see all of the galaxies. Because running on the server, there's a view distance limit that we have to impose just to allow slower clients to work. But here, if they run it on their local computer and it's good enough, they can see all the galaxies in here. And there's some other crazy ones with like many versions of Earth and so on. So that's something that's been built into the instance. There is this wonderful little miscellaneous option here where you can set it to go to your server automatically upon launch. And so that's actually another thing that we've done. So it just skips one more step of the kids won't run into single player immediately or something. It'll just automatically connect into the server, which is really helpful if you're just trying to get going really fast. So if you did want to do that, you would then just have the WHIMC server address, which if you are not sure, you can go here on the website, and we have this join our server, and here is the address that you can put in there. Okay, and there we go. Two things happened. One, it immediately jumped me onto the server, which is great. It picks up where my account last was. If you have a new joiner, they're going to start at the beginning. But then also it prompts for the resource pack download to try to make sure that you're going to be installing the resource pack to make the world look like we'd like it to look. So that's pretty cool. Here I am in the new map that I wanted to show off today. And this is the other major thing that has changed. So this is a new version of MyNOAA. So we've always had this version of MyNOAA where you can go travel across the different sides of it. And in fact, let me pull up a few images to show what we mean by that. So the way that we're presenting MyNOAA now is similar to how we did it before, but with a few tweaks. So it is presented as a mystery world. So participants go through all the other open exploration worlds. We scaffold the process of helping them learn what to look at and that kind of thing. But then they get to one where we're not going to tell them what the scenario is. And the problem with that one in the past is that if they did any amount of reading or sort of even minimal sleuthing, they could figure it out. And really what we want them to think about is not as if everything is just one big mystery, but there's actually a bunch of different pieces of data to collect and many smaller mysteries to solve, and that you put that all together and you can pose it what the actual big hypothetical world is. But there's lots of sub mysteries to be solved, and this is also helpful for returning campers who've done this before, or kids that can just figure it out really quick. That's the way that we do it. And so we have to do a lot of work with just helping them understand that there's this concept of collecting evidence, that all these observations they're making, the science tools they're using, those are all evidence, and they can use that to make a proposal of what they think is going on. And this is sort of basic science at junior high level, but it's often really, really hard for kids. And so we actually go through a bunch of big different examples in our opening introduction of talking about here's an example with short trees, and I skipped fast there. Here's the wind turbine, these things they can observe by either science tools or visually that tip them off to what's really going on in these worlds. And they, at this point, will have visited a number of worlds that have things going on that are similar to MyNOAA, so they can put those pieces together to figure out probably what's happening on MyNOAA. And so we go through all of those and set them up for it. And I do give them this very strong reminder that they're on one world. I think it's often hard when kids run through a portal, they sort of think, I'm going to another dimension, I must be flying to another world. On a number of the WHIMC settings, they may not realize they're just either traveling in time on the same world, or they're traveling across the globe to another part of it. And so anyway, eventually they make up evidence or come up with evidence and come up with theories, and we have discussion about that, and that's part of the instruction in the classroom. Those are examples of past ones. But what I wanted to also get at is we can explain a little bit of the scenario. The teacher guide has all that information. Here we go. Just to rehearse the different sides of MyNOAA. So they're going to start out underneath the eclipse on this side, and that side has not changed very much. It's really just a small little set of island chain area that they can look at, and they can dive around in the ocean. So they very then quickly traverse to this one where they're on the side of the planet. So they're right here, and they're on the volcanic ridge, and they see that the giant moon coming up over the horizon. And then the one that we changed was, it now looks like this. Previously, it looked kind of like an exotic alien world. Well, and while that was fun, it really led the kids astray in coming up with scenarios about what it was about. So we revisited the scenario and decided to try to make it a lot more realistic in how it could look, and that MyNOAA would have great variance in tides, and that would really affect on certain parts of the planet how life would look, especially in some of the coastal areas. And that's what's depicted here, is that we have a coastal area where you have a sort of frontier exploration base, and there's some fun stuff in there. We kept the museum because kids often like the idea of the museum of Minoa, but we tried to put in a lot more material here they could notice in the environment to help piece together the picture. And that's to illustrate this side of the planet where they can't see that moon at all. They can't see Tyron, the giant, the gas giant moon, but they can see the sun and the rest of the world. And they're trying to figure out what makes it different. Okay, so let's actually go look at that. This is where they would begin in that world, and they're in this little cargo drop area in a tower. And if they walk out back here, which I think many of them will do, they'll notice like many other worlds, we have tips floating in the air. Why does this loading dock go up and down? That's their first hint that this might be. You can kind of see it's got like a scaffolding, and there's a crane. This is presumably where a boat would drop off supplies. But they notice like it's kind of flooded and swampy, and it looks like the water goes up and down quite a bit. And if they dive into the water, it's a little hard to see. It appears they can see that there's actually trees underwater, and this would suggest that the water goes up and down quite a bit. These trees aren't always submerged. And if they go in towards the coast, they'll get the same thing. But there are times that they look like that. Okay, this will blink for a second. What I realized is the instructor instance did not have the map enabled in full. So what they will see is little markers like this. See how this says is the sea level normal, and over here, sunken forest. There's another similar one over there. What this is an effect of, and you can see in the lower right, there's the little mini map. They will all have a mini map like that too, which shows them different locations and arrows to find. And our previous version did some of that stuff, but the markers weren't nearly as good, and it was harder for us to change as instructors. So we have them pinned pretty well to different NPCs, and they're labeled so they can get up here and know that, okay, this is the atmospheric observation deck. And here we have one of our first hints of the magnetic field wave is going to be coming in 3, 2, 1. Now, depending on the time of the day, they may or may not be able to make out the magnetic field lines. There are aurora borealis that are happening on the horizon, but through the glass, it's probably a little hard to see. We can talk to this guy, this biologist, I should say, and he says, phew, going up those stairs always wins me. Did you know the gravity is just a little bit higher here? And there's an explanation for this in the slides, but basically you have the compounding gravity of the giant moon pulling on the planet, or well, the Earth. I guess it's the moon that is gas giant size pulling on the Earth that is its moon. In addition to the sun, they're both creating gravity, a gravitational effect. And so there's actually a little bit more or a little bit less gravity depending on the situation. So that's one of their first hints. And then he also notes the walkway is elevated because there are larger tides. And so like most of the other WHIMC worlds, they can run around and see things that give them hints about what's going on. We have a fun little speed run here. This is one of the things that kids love the most, is being able to zip around really fast. The mines do catch them though. And along the way, there's little hints like what's the actual tilt? Does it matter? If they're trying to figure out what Earth this is, what is the scenario, they have to determine, is it the same Earth? What's going on? How much daylight is there present to grow crops? Or if they look up over here, they can see the windsock is not blowing in the wind, so there's not a lot of wind. So they're able to check these different variables to help them figure out, where's the moon anyway? What are some of the clues for what the planet is? And here's one of the biggest ones. And actually, I'm just going to fly up because they would have seen this if they were at nighttime. You can see these aurora borealis on the edge, and this is one of the things that using that multi-MC instance gets us, is we can do atmospheric effects like this. So the stars look a little cooler, but more notably, they can see that there are aurora effects, and that's because there are really big magnetic fields. You can see this floating magnetic field demo or sculpture really to help them think about and care about the magnetic fields. And if we walked into the Museum of Minoa, which used to just kind of give you the straight answer, this can be locked when you first do the mission. So we often will either blow up the pressure plates or have something else going on. Now, even if they get the answer from here, by the way, they still have to make an argument for why they think it's the answer. They'll say, they might say something like, oh, I think it's a moon of a gas giant. And I can say, well, why do you know that? And they might say, well, I saw it in the museum. And I ask, well, are you sure everything you see in the museum is right? How do museums know what they know? They have to use evidence and science and data and theories to figure that out. So the curator welcomes them around, and there's a little bit to explore in here. You can see kind of this, there's the iconography everywhere, right? So even if I run outside, you'll be able to see this. Here we have giant Neptune, and we have little Earth. And then in here, same thing, Neptune, Earth. It's constantly hinted. They can run up the stairs. And See up here, we have Minoa and Tyron, so they get that little diorama they used to get in the museum too. Here we have high tide, trees underwater, low tide, trees above water. So the museum kind of just reiterates a lot of what they're expected to notice. So here we have the eclipse going on, was where we have our sun, our gas giant, and we have our Minoa Earth that is being eclipsed. And over here, Minoa and Gold is a throwover from the old one. But the magma is a reminder that there is magma flowing on one side of it. And then down over here is the other piece that it matters, is that they can loop back to the start. So one of the things that we really strongly encourage kids to do now is not just one and done the mystery, is to go through it a few times to figure out what they missed, pay more attention. What really tends to happen, I'll sort of show you what I see a lot of kids do, is they'll start at the beginning of the level and we start them looking up, and theirs will even preload the planet there. And they're supposed to notice that eclipse, but what a lot of them do is get their bearings, and the second they possibly can, by the way, the auroras going on everywhere, they can notice those here as well. Anyway, they will just speed run across this, not talk to the guy, not like run around under the water, not even look in the sky. They just run immediately for the ship, because in their mind, the only point of Minecraft is to speed run it. And so we have this loop so that they can speed run it, but hopefully they notice at least a little bit more every time they go through it, even if we're not going to be able to get them to slow down all the time. So you can see how fast I can speed run this. This can be a very short, series. And if I didn't look to my left here on the way up top of the ladder, they might not have even seen the giant gas giant on the horizon there. So getting the kids to slow down and pay attention. Anyway, so here we are back at the beginning. Let's go just to get to the end there one more time. Of course you can type /magnetic field and, get some of these things like magnetic field is strong. They can't get through the sewers. Ha ha ha. I missed the exit out here. And so, hopefully at each point that they're seeing one of these hints, they're actually checking that and then, comparing if they're working in teams, they can compare notes. So here we have tilt. Tilt is 0 degrees. Oh, that's different. And there's other stuff like gravity, right? And so here we go, 105%, because you've got the additional Neptune pull that's affecting just a little bit. Now that 5%, by the way, that's an estimate. This is obviously a made-up hypothetical. I'm sure real scientists would argue over that one. Anyway, besides the museum, where they can figure out largely what's going on, we also have the spaceship that we go back to the space station. When we have camps, the server is locked and they actually can't get back there. So it's somewhat contained. It is possible if they really try to jump off the edge and get to start swimming around in the jungle and whatnot, like pretty much any of the other maps. If they want to get lost, they can. And that's, to some extent, we're okay with exploration happening, just because that's one of the things we want them to do. Anyway, that is just a quick recap, that is just a short run through of the stuff that we changed with the new section of Minoa, and a little bit on the details of how we teach it a little bit differently. As always, you can go to resources and go to For Educators on the website, and what you will find is all kinds of supports for teachers, including, besides these teacher guides, besides these walkthroughs, we have these teacher guides that will hopefully take me to box if the internet wants to behave. Here we go. Here's the book, which won't actually have this because that has not been updated like everything else. But if we do click on any of these, it should take us to the directory, and you'll see the Minoa guide has been the most up to date of any of these. We did some tweaking on No Moon as well, but in here, if you're trying to remember any of the stuff I talked about or figure out what you want to talk to kids about as they run through the levels, it is all here. Here we are. Here's the Minoa guide walking through all the different standards, and this has been updated. It matches the sort of focus and tone of all the others, but we have the same maps as the original, and then here's our new map and new locations and some of the NPCs that have been adjusted since our last updates. Thank you for taking the time to go through the Minoa update and learn about the multi-MC client updates. We will have more coming soon about some of the new AI stuff we're doing and how quick Red Fox works.